Can you hear me? Geppetto's puppet. We need your help.
Hey there, let's talk about Lies of P. So when I beat the Elden Ring DLC, I was like, hey, I want more. So I looked in my Steam library, and then I remembered I did what almost everyone does on Steam, is I found a game that I bought I don't know how long ago for like a super heavily discounted price, and I just forgot about it. And that game happened to be Lies of P. So I asked my friends about it, and they're like, yeah, the game's pretty good. None of them played it, by the way. And I hadn't heard anything about it either. Like, I think I saw like one person stream it. I don't really watch streaming that much, so that kind of tracks. But yeah, I went in super blind. I was like, maybe this game will be pretty good. Yeah, I was super wrong. This game's not pretty good. This game's amazing. So either I'm super out of touch and everyone loves this game and I don't know anything, or no one plays this game and I am valid. There's definitely no in between. Doesn't really matter. I still wanted to make a video about this game because I think it's awesome. So if you haven't played it, just sit back and I will convince you to play it slowly through this video. And if you have played it, please stay because the video is good, I think. So what is Lies of P? Well, Lies of P is a Souls-like made by NeoWiz of DJ Max fame and Round 8 Studio of Bless Unleashed fame. Now, please don't click off the video. I know you just heard the word Souls-like, and it's very tempting because the word Souls-like has been used for many games, a lot of which are not very good. So let me just start over. Alright, I'm going to try and tell you with just one sentence. Lies of P is a Souls-like made by NeoWiz and Round 8 Studio that revolutionizes the Souls-like genre by combining the best elements of Dark Souls, Sekiro, and Bloodborne. Yeah, I just said something like super crazy, but it is not clickbait. I truly believe the words that are coming out of my mouth. I guess it doesn't even work as clickbait because it's been like 2 minutes since the video started, so I already got you. But that's what the video's for, right? I said something crazy, kind of, and I'm gonna back it up. So I usually don't like it when videos just kind of don't have a structure to them, so I'm gonna give you structure. So this video is gonna have 3 parts, right? First part is going to talk about the combat, specifically the defensive mechanics. Second part is going to talk about the combat system again, but this time the weapons. And the third part is just going to be like a section of things that I thought were cool that I didn't really feel like deserved a section because they're kind of short. That section doesn't really encapsulate everything I liked. It's just some things I think that will convince you to play the game. Because ultimately, I want people to play the game, but more importantly, I want people to experience it for themselves. Which means that they gotta find some stuff out that I'm not talking about. Okay, so like I said, we're gonna start with the combat system, specifically the defensive mechanics. So in defense, you have 3 main mechanics. You have rolling, you have blocking, and you have parrying. Now, you can technically make blocking and rolling better, but I think for the sake of argument, I'm gonna talk about these at like the baseline level. So I'm assuming that you're starting from like nothing, and that this is kind of the playing field where everyone is equal. I think it just makes the most sense to talk about that. I know that you can make certain things broken, but for the purpose of my argument, I'm just gonna assume that all of these are at their like baseline level of strength. Alright, first up, let's talk about rolling. Now, you don't even have to have played a Souls-like game. If you've watched like any footage, you've probably seen rolling. But just for the sake of argument, I'm gonna explain it anyway, just in case you don't really know what it is. So, like the name implies, what rolling is you roll in a specific direction. While you're rolling, you have a certain amount of time where you're invincible. These are called iframes. That's all you really need to know about the mechanics of rolling. Now, as a defensive mechanic, rolling is super versatile because you can use it offensively and defensively. So defensively is kind of intuitive. You roll away from the enemy. This is technically more defensive because you are putting distance between you and your enemy, which makes them harder to hit. The offensive use is you use those aforementioned iframes and you roll into attacks so that you're dodging but also putting yourself in a position where it's easier to attack whatever enemy you're fighting. Now, I know that it's not binary, like there's more than offensive and defensive options. Like you can use it to put distance between you and the enemy. You can do like sideways movement, which is not technically like offensive or defensive, it's kind of like a lateral shift. You can say that those are more offensive or defensive depending on how you do it. But in general, it's a really versatile tool, And there's a good reason why it's basically the staple defensive option of a lot of the Souls games. Alright, so second thing I gotta talk about is blocking. Now, before I can actually go talk about blocking, I actually need to explain the rally system from Bloodborne. Now, the rally system is where when you get hit, a portion of the damage that you take actually gets shrunk into this like opaque HP bar. And if you attack within a certain time frame, you'll gain that HP back. It works basically the same in Lies of P. There are probably a little bit of differences between the two, but it's essentially the same. So how blocking works is when you block and an attack hits you, you lose HP, stamina, and a little bit of weapon durability. Now, I think you can see where this is going, but the rally system allows you to, I guess, mitigate the downsides of blocking. I think this turns blocking from like this really boring defensive option into something that you can actually put thought into. So now when you block, you know that if you can attack right after at a good time where you won't get hit, you can actually recoup a lot of the life that you just lost from blocking. This turns blocking into like a really interesting defensive option, and it's pretty strong too because of the rally system. And I think Lies of P does a really good job turning this really, I don't know how to put this I guess boring mechanic into something that's actually a lot more interesting than you might think. Alright, last up we have my favorite mechanic, parrying. Now, I love parrying to the point where Sekiro is my favorite in the FromSoft games, and it's not even close. That game is like an 1,000 out of 10. So I might be a little bit biased in this section. But before we can talk about parrying, I gotta talk about two other mechanics. You guessed it. I have to talk about Stagger from the Souls series and Perilous attacks from the GOAT Sekiro. Let's start with Stagger. So how Stagger works is basically every single enemy has an invisible stagger bar. When you hit them, the stagger bar goes down. If you stop hitting them after a bit, the stagger bar goes up. Easy peasy. So when that stagger bar depletes all the way, in the Souls games, enemies will generally like get stunned, and then you can do like a big riposte counterattack on them. In Lies of P, the only difference is that the stagger part where they get stunned isn't the same. I'll explain later, like when I start explaining, you know, what parrying is. But for now, all you need to know is that in Lies of P, enemies do have this stagger meter that does deplete when you attack them. And when it runs out, something else happens. So, on the other side of the coin, we have Perilous attacks from Sekiro. So, in Sekiro, what happens is an enemy will do a big attack. A danger symbol will appear over Wolf's head. And you basically have to respond accordingly to that unblockable attack they are now doing. So in Sekiro, there's like a specific way you're supposed to deal with each option. You can parry, you can jump, you can do this like lightning reversal in some cases. But what you need to know is basically these attacks are unblockable and you need to respond with them in a certain way. I know the comparison's a little bit rough, but in Lies of P, this kind of exists. So basically enemies will turn red, and they're essentially indicating that this attack is unblockable. And now when you see this, you have two choices. You can either just not get hit completely, or you can parry. Alright, finally, we can talk about the star of the show, which is parrying. Now how to parry is super simple. When an enemy is about to hit you, all you do is you just hit the guard button. Technically it's called the perfect guard, but we all know it's parrying, so don't at me. So basically, when you parry, you don't lose any HP, you don't lose any durability, you do lose a little bit of stamina, but more importantly, you lower that stagger meter I was talking about earlier. This makes parry a very unique defensive option, because it's kind of offensive in nature. It allows you to like attack, parry when you need to, attack. Obviously, it's a very skill-based defensive mechanic, because if you mess up, you get hit and you lose HP. But if you're good, you can keep attacking, and you can also lower the enemy's stagger while being defensive, which is crazy. Okay, so quick aside, I said I'd talk about this. There's not really a good place to put it anywhere else. So this is the flip side of stagger in Lies of P. So when you deplete the enemy stagger in Lies of P, they don't get stunned right away. What happens is they start like blinking, and when they start blinking, that means that you know you can do a charged heavy attack in order to get the actual stun off, so you can do your big riposte. Just personally, this system is super cool. I like it because it's a lot more engaging than just hitting the enemy until they get staggered. I think that the element of needing to learn the patterns of the enemies so that you know when you can get in that big charge heavy attack so you can get even more big damage, really cool, really rewarding. I'm talking really fast because I just want to get through this section and not take more of the time, even though saying this is doing that. So back to defense. Okay, so I think at this point you might be like, okay, well this is cool, but it's not exactly unique because you can already do these things in the Soul series. Now, again, the unique part about this is that you can do all three of these defensive options at any time with any build, and baseline, they are all strong. Now, if we're being honest with ourselves, that is not the case with the Solo series. First of all, you need a pretty specific build to be able to do all three, and they're not going to be very good if you do that, right? I mean, most likely blocking is going to be the one that's like super weak in that kind of build. I will say though, in Bloodborne and Sekiro, you can do all three of these defensive options just baseline. However, in Bloodborne, blocking is pretty weak, so that's why it's not quite the same. And in Sekiro, even though it is useful, dodging is pretty bad compared to blocking and parrying. So I think that Lies of P stands apart from them because, like I said, all of them are strong, and then now you kind of get this more balanced sense of what you can do on defense. That sense of balance of defensive options is actually what separates Lies of P from all the other games. When you have three strong defensive options, you actually feel like you make meaningful decisions on defense. I think oftentimes when you're kind of stuck with one really strong defensive option that you kind of default to, it gets a little bit frustrating if you get stuck on a boss because if you're struggling with them, you kind of feel like you're pigeonholed into only using that defensive option. In Lies of P, it's really nice because if there's something that you're struggling with, there's another way you can tackle it that doesn't feel like you're doing like a super suboptimal option. It's just a different option that fits the situation better. And I think when you start choosing defensive options that fit the situation, rather than just always doing quote unquote what's best, it feels really good. And it feels like you make correct decisions on defense for your playstyle. And I think that is an incredible experience to have when you're playing a game. Alright, I think that's enough about defense. Hopefully by this point you understand why I think defense is so cool. And more importantly, I hope that you can understand why I said now that this game takes the best part of Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Dark Souls and it kind of meshes it into one. I think the combat system is a good example of that. So, hopefully this makes you want to play. But yeah, like I said, this is enough about defense. Let's talk about the other side, which is offense. Now, we're not talking about, how you attack and stuff. We're actually just going to be talking about the weapon system. So the weapon system is super simple. You have two parts to each weapon that aren't boss weapons or that weird collaboration like spear thingy. You have the blade and you have the hilt. The blade is really simple. It's the one that has the raw damage and it's the one you upgrade. So, you upgrade the blade, you do more damage. The hilt is actually the way more interesting part. Now, the hilt controls the scaling of the weapon, which you can change. But the most important part is that it has the moveset of the weapon. Now, what ties this all together is that you can mix and match hilts and blades. So you can create whatever weapon you want within the context of the game, obviously. You like the moveset, but you think the blade's a little bit too short? Swap it out for a longer one. Conversely, you hate the moveset, but you think that hammer piece looks sick? Throw another moveset on there to make your hammer of your dreams, right? You can even make this thing. So you may have noticed this isn't a direct upgrade system. There are actually downsides to decisions that you make. So for example, if you make a blade longer, the weapon's just going to be slower. If you choose a shorter blade, your weapon will swing faster, but you might do less damage, and obviously now you've lost the reach. So this is a good example of lateral power movement, right? It's like a horizontal movement instead of just a direct upgrade, which is going up. So I like this system because it allows you to deal with problems you might be having in the game without getting stronger. You can mix and match your weapons to try and make something that suits the situation rather than just getting stronger and kind of brute forcing it. This is kind of the same as defense, where I feel like you're making a meaningful decision rather than you just are unga bunga, I'm stronger. So this weapon system, while cool, it also represents a good idea in game design. Alright, I think that does it for the combat. Obviously that's not all of the combat that exists in the game. There are a lot of things I actually didn't talk about, but I think that this is enough of a primer to get you interested, right? Like I said before, the point of this video is not to tell you everything that exists in the game. It just is to tell you enough to get you interested, so you're like, hey, I want to try this out now. And if me telling you about these parts of the combat system wasn't enough, well, welcome to the third section, which is things that I thought were cool but did not deserve their own section. So unlike the other sections, you guys don't get a sneak peek. I'm just going to keep talking about what I want to talk about. So the first thing is quality of life. This game is filled with great quality of life. It is very clearly a game that was made by people who were like, hey, I don't like that I don't have this in the Souls game. So they put it in the Souls game, and it's amazing. There's a lot of things I could talk about, but I'm just going to talk about two of them. One, Ergo, or your souls, they spawn outside of boss rooms when you die in them. Great change, super small, just a really nice quality of life, 10 out of 10. The next thing is a little bit bigger. There's a training area. There's a training area with training dummies, right? There's ones that attack and ones that are just for you to just wail on. Like, it sounds so small, but quality of life is truly the lifeblood of games, right? The more quality of life you have, your game is just that much better, right? I really feel like games kind of live and die on their quality of life sometimes, and Lies of P has no shortage of quality of life. Alright, secondly, we have the empty pulse cell system. So your health pots in this game are called pulse cells. I'm just going to call them cells because saying pulse cells is kind of long. So when you run out of cells, there's a little bar that appears over your cell, and when you hit an enemy, that bar starts to fill up, and when it goes all the way to the top, you get an extra use, right? If you go back down to 0, like if you use it, you hit an enemy again, it'll keep building up. This system is, I think, obviously really cool. It's coming really clutch because I think that it makes it so that if you play really well and you don't get hit, you can survive because you've earned yourself an extra flask charge, right? This has saved me twice in boss fights, right? There are definitely times where I had to clutch it out by not getting hit, and having an access to an extra cell just made it that much easier to clutch out the boss. Cool system. I think it's really fun to play with. So this third thing might not be like a huge selling point to people, but I really like the story in this game, and also I really like that they've integrated gameplay mechanics into the story of this game, right? I'm not going to go super in depth, but there's a really cool gameplay mechanic that allows you to reinforce or go completely separate from one of the core themes of the game. I think that this is maybe an underrated part of games sometimes, where the story is good when the combat is the main focus of the game, but I think it's a nice addition to the game, and I think it just makes the game that much better. So this last part is actually not any kind of mechanic or feature the game has. I just wanted to share a moment that I thought was cool that really made me love the game. I know earlier I said that I wanted people to experience parts of this game for themselves. In fact, I want you to experience a majority of this game for yourself. So I will say that this thing that I'm about to share is probably not going to happen to you unless you are going in completely blind and you also have knowledge of the DJ Max games. So I will put timestamps in my video. There will be a conclusion section at the end. You can skip straight there if you don't want to hear this part. So here it is. So in the central character hub, there is a place where you can listen to the tracks in the game, and they'll have, like, you know, the name of the song, and then it'll just kind of play ambiently throughout the character hub. So I got this track called Memory of Beach, and I was like, oh, you know, I remember listening to that song on DJ Max. Like, it's funny that they have the same name. So I was like, you know, let's listen to it. So I sat there listening to it, and then I was like, wait, this is actually the song from DJ Max. And it just seems like something that's so small, but it just kind of floored me that I had this like really cool moment where I was like, oh, this is actually the DJ Max songs. I later learned that every single song in this game is actually a re-rendition of DJ Max songs, which is like mind-blowing. So that is already cool, but I really enjoyed that really random moment where I was like, you know, this would be funny if this was true, and it turns out it was. Alright, so we finally made it. We're here at the end. I promised you guys a conclusion, so here it is. The first thing I wanted to say is that Lies of P isn't a perfect game. I know I've been glazing it for, I don't know, like 20 minutes now, but I think you should expect some level of struggle, I think. Like, I think the game is really good, don't get me wrong. If we're being totally transparent, this game is top 3 Souls games. It's basically Sekiro, Bloodborne, and then Lies of P. But I'd say that there are some things I don't like about the game. Like, I think heavy weapons are a little bit too weak. I don't like the hitboxes sometimes. They feel kind of jank still, even though I know they've done some patching. But overall, I think the game is, I mean, by my rating, it's insane, right? It is a masterpiece. So I think that even though I've been gassing up the game, I want people to, you know, go in and have their own experience, right? Because at the end of the day, I can't tell you how to feel about a game. I can just tell you what I think is cool, and then, you know, you can agree or disagree. So the last thing I want to talk about is actually something I said in the beginning of the video. I think I said something like Lies of P revolutionizes the Souls-like genre, and I want to correct that. Lies of P is the future of the Souls-like genre. And like, if for no other reason, it's just the amount of quality of life that exists in this game, right? I think this should just be the gold standard going forward. Like, I might be overhyping it, but there's just so much stuff that I liked in terms of quality of life that I just feel like it would be cool to have this in other games. In all seriousness, I think Lies of P is the future because we've actually seen the peak of a system that is dictated by rolling as your primary defensive mechanic. Of course, I'm talking about what I said at the start of the video, which is the Elden Ring DLC. Now, this is not to say that the game is bad. I just think that when they made the bosses simply hit harder, be faster, and then have some delays in their strings, and then also your time to counterattack be super low, I think that it really showed the limitations of this role-based system because there's not a lot they could have done to make the game much more difficult. I think that when you have multiple defensive options available to you and they're all strong, it opens up a lot more design direction for the developers in terms of designing a boss to be harder, right? Can you imagine what it would have been like to parry some of those Elden Ring bosses like all the way like you can in Sekiro or in Lies of P? Like, that would have been really fun. But instead, you can only really roll, and I think only some attacks are parryable, and they're not like the cool kind of parry. It's just like the, oh yeah, I'm like deflecting you kind of parry, but I still gotta, you know, be cognizant of the other hits. This isn't to say that the Elden Ring DLC is bad. It is top 4. It is 4th, obviously. But I think that Lies of P is a vision of the future of what we can have if we expand our horizons and give the players more defensive options and we design around those defensive options. So in conclusion, please play Lies of P. The game is amazing. I don't think it'll let you down. And I think that if you like it, you should tell your friends to play it too. Thanks for watching. Hi, post-edit me here. So originally I wanted to take my time with this video. I spent a decent amount of time, you know, writing a script, ironing everything I wanted to say, you know, I wanted the edits to be better. And then they released the Lies of P trailer for the DLC. So I kind of sped up my timetable because I wanted to release this as close to the release of the trailer as possible. I didn't think this was going to come out for months, so I was just going to drop this video whenever I want to take my time with it. But I now have to rush it, so I apologize for the poor quality. I originally wanted this to be maybe not a little bit longer, but I know that the video is scuffed and I don't really like that. But I felt like it was more important to get this out as soon as the DLC release dropped, so there. So I'd like to say thank you for watching. This is my first video ever. I hope you liked it. I know people do like the whole subscribe thing, but I'm not really sure where this is gonna go. I just kind of wanted to talk about stuff, and I like talking about stuff. So there's just kind of outlet for me to just talk about stuff I like. So if you want to subscribe, go ahead. But I think a lot of people say, hey, you know, tell me what you think in the comments. I genuinely want you to do that because I like talking to people about this stuff. It's always weird when people are like, yeah, comment below, and then, you know, people write something and then they'll respond with like a haha, that's funny, or like, you know, whatever. I kind of do want to engage with people who want to talk about this stuff, so if you leave a comment within like a reasonable time frame, like if it's 5 years later, sorry bud, but you know, I'll probably respond. So I don't know. Thank you guys for watching, and have a great rest of your day.